Chuck asks Sally why he'd ever want to make a giant motorized robot. Because somehow a genius doesn't instantly assume she means that it'd be made capable of destroying cell bars to save Bunny and destroy the roboticizer. Even though not questioning the plan would give her time to explain herself and he'd know that, he thinks it's worthwhile to waste time saying that one Eggman's more than enough when he'd know she wouldn't want him to make the robot think like Eggman. The plan is even stupider than I thought. I thought the robot was going to be able to shoot lasers to blast through the walls to get to Bunny, but instead Sally wants to use it as a Trojan horse for all of them to hide in. Because a smart character can't be smart if the writer doesn't let her. And the writer wants a kooky kitty idea to resolve a sad AM plot. As if that would fit the tone of the rest of the story. She says Eggman's in love with himself, so he would accept anything that looks just like him. He wouldn't think it was a tribute though, because the heroes made it. Who else would have? She wouldn't think he's stupid. If only it was explained that they all know that a part of the Robian reprogramming is that the Robians make tributes to Eggman after work hours. You'd think Eggman would be vain enough to have that arranged. Actually do something with the Robians. That explained why he wouldn't instantly assume a giant robot looking like him was not made by the heroes. He'd leave it where it is and have SWATbots be stationed around it. Somehow nobody realizes this should happen. Instead, everyone's convinced and Sonic calls it a cool idea. It is good to have a heroic character compliment his friend. But this only sounds like a cool idea, and only in a vacuum. Antoine says he sees a problem with this plan. Finally, someone does. But I bet the writer will be too stupid to know what it is. After some time is wasted with Sonic and M insulting each other for their personalities, with Antoine inexplicably saying that Sonic is always putting Sally in danger when they just started being heroes, and it's Sally's idea to go freedom fighting. Sally tells him to stop arguing, and calmly asks him what he thinks the problem is with the plan, not insulting him for not liking her plan. See, this is why I say she's polite and archy, because this is reminding me of how she was there most of the time. Harmless unless she was interacting with Sonic. She doesn't act like an oversensitive Sonic fan would if you insulted something they liked. Antoine asks how they would ever be able to find Bunny because the city is huge. Sally reminds him that since Chuck's seen the jail cells in Robotropolis and the roboticizer, he would save them a lot of time and trouble if he remembers how to get to them. So why didn't Antoine know that? Chuck gets scared just being asked where the roboticizer is located. I hate that the writers made him a coward. He's even more of one than Antoine. There's no appeal to this version of the character. He says he doesn't remember any of his experiences as a robot because this is an alternate universe from SADM itself. Just because your brain is metal doesn't mean it should stop recording long-term memory the same way. When the memories are the same thing physically, just zeros and one of electric current. It only feels like it makes sense on a meta level because it looks like a different person after the derobotization happens. And two different people don't share memories. How do you think the info is buried deep in his memory then if it's a matter of two different forms having two different sets of memories because the ring that deroboticized him did so by sending his body back in time? The only way he wouldn't remember being a robot. Sally must be desperate to think that a ring being used on him would get that information. It's not like it can roboticize him. It's not the same one that deroboticized him that they're going to use. Well, if it can deroboticize him, it makes just as much sense that it could do something else, because that's convenient as hell when Chuck had no way of knowing anyone would want derobotization. Only the magic that's in all of the world combining with the powers of the rings and giving them new powers would make those powers possible. That makes as much sense as Chaos Emerald, so fine. If the Emerald can combine with the power in a magical enough being to allow him to do a new power in the form of Chaos Control, this is the same principle. The book should have explained that. Sonic goes to the Lake of Rings. And surprisingly, Tails is there for no reason instead of in school or reading at home. He doesn't have a book with him, so he had nothing to do here. Was he here hoping that Sonic would come for a ring and then ask for its help? I guess so. It's too bad that isn't explained. That's pretty sad that he'd waste all his time just sitting here with nothing to entertain himself. Sonic tells Tails he could help him by grabbing the ring when it comes out of the lake. Tails grabs the ring and is beaming with pride at the very easy task he did that Sonic could have done too. And I'm just steaming at how condescendingly he's portrayed and wondering how he thinks this is good enough for him. He's not 3 years old. Sonic tells Tails he did good work, puts the ring in front of Chuck, and images from his memory get projected on the wall. Sally saves all those convenient images in Nicole's memory banks. I forgot Nicole existed and didn't notice that she hasn't had any lines. Good, that means I got through the story faster. An image of the inside of Robotropolis gets Sally to say that's exactly what they need. And Chuck wakes up when the ring is taken away from him. It wasn't worth it to have Chuck be deroboticized if it was only done to have this padding where they had to get a ring. Sonic keeps the ring in his backpack just in case, which is smart of him. He does it all the time in the show. It'd be so much easier for Sonic if the rings were energy that just stayed in his bloodstream so he could use them at will. And energy being solid isn't really interesting. And it being a new idea doesn't necessarily make it good. So rings are done wrong. But such a nitpick, I don't feel anything about it. It's still great writing that he has a backpack so he can keep stuff in it. The only reason he doesn't do that in the games is it'd never be useful due to the way the adventures are. The story tries to look realistic by having it take a few days for the big robot to be built. Antoine says excellent job. Why does it have to have Tails ask if he could go with them on the adventure and get told no, when he's just as capable as the rest of them? It's condescending that Sonic says he needs him to look after Chuck and protect Knothole. As if Chuck needs it or he could protect Knothole. Tails is worthless in his eyes, even though he can fly, and none of the Saturday M characters have magic powers like that. You'd think that'd impress him. It's a perpetual cycle. He thinks he's worthless because he never helps him, and he never helped him because he's not given a chance because he's seen as worthless. Saturday M would have had Tails fighting Sonic when he has a good excuse feel right and be cathartic, when the whole show was justifying such a thing. It looks like the only reason Tails has to like Sonic is his speed, which is not enough to justify liking this jerk. And Sonic only likes Tails because he's a cute kid for now and is willing to serve him. It's not telling me anything deeper than that is the case, like in AOSCH. So the heroes get into the robot they made, and Rotor has some controls to sit at, so it's not actually a robot. Eggman instantly figures that the heroes are hiding inside that thing. It's meant to make Eggman show his smart side, but it just makes the hero stupid. He thinks it's a sorry likeness of him, and tells Snively to have a team of robots bring that giant robot to the large cargo storage room. I love that Sonic says all of this waiting is driving him nuts. That's just like him. But why is he asking what do they do now when they should have thought of that earlier? Of course they have to keep waiting. It turns out there's a wall around Robotropolis, so the gate has to get opened for them. And the robots merely push the robot inside. I don't know why Eggman didn't make the order to have the robots stay around the giant one, if not to try to get inside. The heroes would have to leave it eventually. And then the robots would bring them to Bunny so they could see her get roboticized. Why is Eggman doing it this way? The plot falls apart just so the heroes can win. Sonic says way to go, and Sally used a projection light from Nicole to get a map of the city on the wall so they could figure out how to get to the cells. Why are they all doing their special handshake when every second they waste is making Bunny have to wait even longer in the cell? Why did Muskie come along with them if this is a world where the robots are invincible? How is this supposed to help them? It would have been believable if the reason the heroes were able to track down Bunny was simply that Muskie tracked down her scent. None of this convoluted, not explained ring memory crap was needed. Why are they overprotective of Tails and not Muskie? A cage falls from the ceiling and traps the heroes. Then for blatant padding, there's a boring scene that just has Eggman gloat to Snively. He says to send all of the robots to bring Sonic to him. Why would it just be Sonic? I thought he wanted all of the heroes to witness Bunny's roboticization. They were all a thorn in his side. Not that we got to learn what they were doing to him, because that would have actually given the audience respect for them as competent heroes. I don't compliment every time Snively's being respectful in his dialogue, since he doesn't actually like him, and Eggman's the bad guy, so it's not heartwarming. He's just a pathetic servant that was never needed because a robot could do and say what he does. It always makes me wonder why he wasn't roboticized from the start if Eggman's pure evil. Snively makes an announcement saying to bring Sonic and his friends to Eggman, even though he wasn't told to say that last part. And conveniently, Eggman doesn't hit him when he's supposed to be a control freak. Why doesn't Eggman make all the announcements? Wouldn't he like doing that? Eggman also tells Snively it was a nice touch that he said fellow traitors, but it's not heartwarming because it's just to encourage him to be more like him for the sake of it, so that's not good either. But I suppose Snively being delighted is good because Eggman made someone happy, even if it's for the wrong reason and he didn't deserve it. Sally says she'll bet Eggman took Bunny only to lure the rest of them here. Duh! Why did she ever think Bunny wasn't going to be roboticized right away? Would she had to have thought to even think building a robot for a few days would be a good idea if she hadn't been running under this assumption all along? The extent of Sally's stupidity is supposed to just be that she insists on Antoine being on the team. And even that's understandable because she wants him to toughen up. Sonic looks like a swirling blue buzzsaw as he cuts through the cage's bars. Why weren't the bars made immune to his spin dash? Eggman's an idiot. He could have had electric bars. Sonic and Rotor throw parts of the cage at the robot. I don't know why it said the top, because that'd be too heavy for them. And it wasn't established in the series yet that Sonic is stronger than he looks. The robots get knocked over, and the heroes run out of the room led by Sonic. Why doesn't it explain that he told them all to grab on and run at Sonic speed? Why would he run at a slow speed so they could keep up, when that implies he has no faith in them? Rotor's detector of robots was brought with them, and yet he's not using it for the robot exploder purpose. What's so much better about them wasting our time hiding so that the robots would run around a bend? It's unique from most of the franchise. It's just barely good, compared with making them explode with the robot exploder. Antoine just has to whine loud enough that the robots hear them, and try to shoot energy at them. So Sonic runs towards them and outruns all of their blasts. He says they need to take some extra target practice at each other, which is a great line for Sonic, but should have warned them not to aim at each other. I guess they didn't have the time to think to be careful when they're just slaves to their programming. And the programming doesn't say to not fire at each other if Sonic's in the way. So Sonic goes in between them to make them shoot each other. This is way more impressive and interesting than him simply defeating them the normal way, I'll give it that. Sonic should have been doing this to the robots the entire show. It's also got the catharsis that Eggman's hyper-competence backfired on him. He didn't have to give the SWAT bots projectile attacks. Sonic sees one SWAT bot left, and somehow that one robot has the other heroes cornered. He uses his ring unnecessarily to boost in a circle around it, which makes his head spin so fast it short circuits. That's creative and interesting, but why? Why just the head? The heads of the robots aren't fastened as well to them as the rest of their bodies for no reason. I think that all that would happen would be the robot would spin around and stand there dizzy, and then Sonic could get his friends away. It sounds silly, but Sonic Heroes had this happen with the egg pawns, because the egg pawns weren't designed that horribly. Sonic using a ring shouldn't be necessary for him to run around something fast enough to spin it. He's supposed to be cool, so what's good about this making him less cool? It's not like he ran around enemies to spin them way too many times in the games, and so he needs to be underpowered because that's creators' pet levels of OP. After all, he shouldn't have too much of an edge over his enemies or they become the underdog. But no, Eggman and him are almost equally matched in the games. You can tell because Sonic doesn't one-shot his every boss fight. It just doesn't seem that way because Sonic has to always win. It's just a minor difference that would improve this. So it's still a great scene. Sonic tells his friends to hang on to him, and they form a chain, and Sonic boosts away with them in tow. So why didn't he have this happen much earlier? They didn't have to stop to fight the robots. If Sally or Rhoda were written properly, they would have told him to do this earlier. They should have justified more why he didn't just run ahead and ignore the robots. They should have said there were just that many robots that they couldn't do that, and he couldn't even jump over them because they're that tall. Rhoda says nice work to Sonic after they stop to check the map again. All of the cells are empty. And Nicole can't project the extra route to the roboticizer for them because the image she got of it isn't clear. That doesn't mean the route to it would be unclear, just the roboticizer itself. She means to say that he doesn't remember the route. Muskie runs away because he's only just now picked up Bunny's scent. They could have just given him some of her fur for that in the first place, oh no. Maybe the logic is because he's not a bloodhound, he's not that good at tracking. But it's a magic world. No one would have questioned it. There's padding until the ceiling slides open and a bunch of robots drop down from above. Rhoda sends his detector to the signal that would destroy the swap bots, making me ask why the hell he didn't do that earlier. But before he could activate the device, it gets shot. So he should have been walking the whole time he was doing this. No one would think he's safe standing still here. The heroes get surrounded and led into a large room. How inconvenient for the heroes that the swap bots somehow didn't decide to try to shoot them this time, which would have them be able to duck in time and get them all destroyed. Why do they know when to shoot and when not to? Why would they ever think they shouldn't shoot? The heroes could have easily just been written to go into the room with the roboticizer instead of needing to be brought here. They could have been brought all the way here because swap bots were stationed around the giant robot in the first place. Then we would have had the one great scene in the story. They don't have Eggman know that it's a Trojan horse. Don't have him know that the robot was even brought there, because why was he even looking at a camera that was aimed at the robot? Should he have been doing something for fun instead of just staring at boring camera footage? The predictable stuff happens. Finally, Bunny's put in the roboticizer and it turns on. Sonic becomes a blue blur and says that it's time to do a supersonic spin. And his supersonic spin smashes robot after robot. I assume this means spin jump because that's what the Western manual is called, spin jump. If he always knew about this, he had no excuse for not doing that the whole time. Apparently this was supposed to be a story about how Bunny became half robot. That's pointless and unnecessary because this clearly is enough different from Saturday M to be a separate universe anyways. And in this retelling, Bunny's body became robotic too, and only her head and right arm weren't upgraded. Since her head wasn't changed, Sally should already know her mind is working. I guess the logic for why she passed out is that she passed out from the pain. It's confusing because when this happened in Archie, this didn't happen. Sniffly says when Sonic smashed the glass to save Bunny, the doors became impossible to open, getting everyone stuck in the control room. Almost like you should have just had normal doors. Why would smashing the roboticizer make a completely separate control panel not work? Part of the control panel's necessary wiring was connected to the roboticizer for no reason? Rotor crosses the circuits in the roboticizer and attaches a portable generator, which is a bomb. Why did he need to cross the circuits in it to make a bomb functional? Eggman and Sniffly are in another room from the heroes, so it's fine. The heroes escape, somehow thinking it matters that they destroyed the roboticizer when people who can still make it are still around. Which wouldn't be the case if Rhoda's bomb was way better. He had no excuse for making the bomb so pathetic that it didn't accomplish that, because he knew Sonic would be able to boost while his friends all hang on to him so he could make the explosion way larger, and not get caught in it. Either he's not capable of making a better bomb, or he didn't want to kill them. Most people don't want to kill people, so it's easier to believe the latter, because the narration said earlier he could invent anything. So he's pretty stupid. The force of the explosion sends Eggman, Snively, and Cluck flying, and they land in a pile on top of one another. Since they have pictures for the book, some things should be illustrated, and this isn't. Eggman says this is all Snively's fault. Surprisingly, Sniffly's written to not be servile to him, which is an out-of-character moment if you go by how he was the whole book. I assume the logic is the straw that broke the camel's back. He says it's his robots, roboticizer, and chicken that failed him. How did his chicken fail him? But it was so cathartic that he said that to Eggman. But you're supposed to have the hero say cathartic stuff to Eggman. The original appeal of his character, if any, was to prop Eggman up as the scared, servile one. But since that was redundant in Sad AM, the real problem with this is that it makes no sense that Sniffly doesn't get roboticized for this. A large steel wall drops in front of the heroes on their way to the main gate to the city. And Bunny gets so mad at being upgraded that she kicks a big hole in the wall. How convenient that the Robians are all given super strength for no reason, as it's not like they're made to try to hunt down the heroes all the time. Even though that would be the smart thing to do. Use the Robians to hunt down other people. I mean, the Robians that used to have jobs that aren't going to be necessary anymore, like athletes. There won't be sports anymore, I think, with no free will. I always assumed the super strength was an unintentional side effect of being a robot. So the heroes all go home, Tails praises Sonic, and so does Chuck, and Sonic thanks them. Sonic is somehow stupid enough to say he should try to restore Bunny to normal with the ring, even though Bunny just learned how useful her being a half-robot is. Somehow nobody thinks they should stop him. Predictably, the ring doesn't downgrade her back to her lame self. Eggman changed the roboticizers so that the rings can't de-roboticize people anymore. That's impossible. The rings would only be able to de-roboticize with magic anyways. How did he put anti-magic on the roboticizer? It should be explained they found some magic material in a mine to do it. I assume that nearly everyone currently roboticized in Robotropolis was done so with the original roboticizer. So Sonic could and should still be de-roboticizing people with rings. And I don't see how Eggman could update the Robians to be immune to rings. Bunny tells Sonic this is okay because she's just thankful she has such good friends and she loves everyone here. That's nice. Cynical people would say they want a bucket from this. Probably because her being so sentimental came out of nowhere. She had the personality of a cardboard cutout until now. A Texan accent is not a personality. She wasn't even written to have her accent, thankfully. I'm glad Antoine was never written with his accent either, because it makes it easier to read. It trusts you to know they have the accents because no one would read this without seeing the show first. The story ends with Sonic saying they should call her Bunny Rabba, and everyone laughs, which is pretty naive to write, but nicer than having her get offended by it. She did just express gratitude over being upgraded, so why would she? Still, Sonic saying they should call her a nickname based on her permanently being changed against her will was a dick-headed out-of-character thing to say. Bunny should have been the one that suggested it. And then I would have liked it better than Bunny Rabo being her real name, which misses the point of the name in the first place. Where that was obviously not what she was given that name by the person who came up with her. This was by Michael Teitelbaum, and was about Bunny getting kidnapped and needing rescue. While I appreciated getting to see another Sad AM style story so I could talk about Sad AM again, that doesn't make it good to the average person because this is such a badly written plot. It just makes all the characters chess pieces to serve the plot, making them all idiots instead of respecting them. There was no reason for the story to last this long. Sure, Rotor would only have so much stamina to run after a robot, but Sally could have run over to Sonic, told him to run after Rotor, and so Sonic would catch up to Rotor and grab the robot exploder from him, and so he would catch up to Bunny and save her. Rotor's a genius. He would have known better. He would have been able to see the robot in the distance. It's not like it's got super speed. The book had 66 pages, but there's no reason they couldn't have had the book consist of multiple stories, instead of a really basic plot that was incredibly padded out. Why did they think their ridiculous, goofy Trojan horse idea wasn't just going to result in them being surrounded by SWAT bots and taking Eggman? Which is what ends up somehow happening anyways. Sonic knows that he can do a spin jump. So why didn't he just do that right away? There was one great scene because the robots were being destroyed in ways that are more interesting and impressive for him than the games. But it was all for nothing because he got captured anyways, which could have happened as soon as they got out of the mecha. And the rest of the book was boring, being uneventful and dragged out.